Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Platitude Era podcast. We're back with another exciting podcast review where we talk about the movie Us. And before we get into a nice discussion about the movie Us, we want to thank everybody for listening to our podcast on the Google Podcast, on Anchor app, on Spotify. We're pretty much all over the place. Just search for us as Platitude Era. Thank you for watching our podcast on YouTube, Platitude Era. You can stay up to date with us socially on Twitter at Platitude Era, or check out our pics at Instagram, Platitude Era Show. Today's podcast, we're talking about the movie Us. So, I'll let you have the opening word. What would you like to say about the movie Us?
You know, Jordan Peele's second outing, his second directorial directing project. For me personally, I think I liked Us better than Get Out, but that's just me. I know everybody went gaga, they went apeshit over Get Out. For me, it felt a little run of the mill. Like, okay, I get it. It wasn't groundbreaking. Now this one's no masterpiece by any means, but I do like the idea of him kind of like going a little bit outside the box in his way of creating a story, or it's a little twisty, a little more out there. I appreciate that when an artist decides to take a more creative turn in his projects, which I can commend him. That being said, this movie's kind of meh. Or the more you think about it, the more you question it, the more confusing it gets, and the more, you want to think about it, and the more Get Out's more cohesive, feels a little more vanilla for me. This feels a little more creative and interesting, but it feels kind of plot holey.
I really enjoyed this movie. I like this movie. I feel that Get Out and the movie Us are two different movies, and you can't compare them. They each offer different things, where Get Out is something that could be grounded in reality, and Us is something that is a little ambitious and goes beyond reality.
Yeah, because it's willing to take more risks, it feels like it's capable of doing more. It tries to jump. It tries to jump that gorge, tries to jump that canyon. It falls down, and then the paramedics are able to revive it, and then it falls back down the canyon again. Reference, but at least it tried. It didn't play it safe, which I felt like Get Out did. Like this is the Jordan Peele that I feel confident will do a good job with the Twilight Zone revival that's coming to CBS All Access, and not necessarily the Get Out one, which as I said before, felt a little more vanilla, felt a little more grounded.
So let's take this, let's dive in layer by layer. Let's start out with the story. As far as the story, I really like the story. I'm impressed. Just to give you the idea of Jordan Peele's talent, he took a really bad storyline, plot line from soap operas, from TV shows where they have the evil twin, and he made a very entertaining story.
Yeah, I could say, the whole the evil twin, like you said, the evil twin story, it does have a interesting take on it. It kind of combines it with a zombie apocalypse-y kind of thing. I don't know if that's a spoiler. You're recording this the weekend after it came out. Assume everybody saw the movie and they're aware of the film. You can hold off on major spoilers, but yeah, it does feel like it is a bit of a combination of horror genres, horror tropes, I guess, and it winds. I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost interest in my thought.
The story's good. He took a really simple story that has failed on TV shows, pretty much throwaway storylines from TV shows.
It only succeeded in Star Trek with Evil Spock.
And he turned it around and made something interesting. So the story's really good, but the story's only half the movie, because while the storyline is good, the writing of each character as well, it all depends on the actors. And if the actors are able to deliver the line well, then it just makes this movie that much stronger.
Yeah, definitely Lupita Nyong'o deserves to be snubbed for an Oscar nomination for this movie.
Lupita Nyong'o was incredible. That brings us up to our next topic, the acting. Lupita Nyong'o killed it again with every movie she makes.
Maz Kanata, everyone's favorite new Star Wars character.
She just kills it with each new movie she
She-
makes.
Kills it. Guys, audience, I'm raising my eyebrows in a suggestive manner.
Okay, now here's another thing as far as the acting. When you cast kids in movies, it's usually the death of a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Lloyd in the Star Wars movies.
You mean Jake?
Jake Lloyd, yes.
Oh, man, I love Edward Furlong. He's my favorite. The Coreys? Macaulay?
Those are examples when you cast the right kid. The movie does well. But when you cast the wrong kid in a movie, it just kills the movie.
I don't know. Phantom Menace is my favorite prequel.
And then,
Yippee!
another bad example of casting the wrong kids would be the movie Jingle All the Way. You cast the wrong
Wow,
child.
you're throwing shade on Jake Lloyd twice. Fuck you.
And from our
Leave
last
the kid alone. He's got his own problems.
and from the last review we
What,
did.
next thing you're going to tell me Edward Furlong sucked in everything else he did?
No, he was really good. But I threw shade at Jack Lloyd on the last
Even
review as
misspelled
well.
You mispronounced his name. Called him Jack.
Okay.
I guess he won't sign your postcard when you go to Emerald City Comic Con next year.
Here's something that is very controversial as far as the acting. A lot of people have complained. Half the people complained about the dad.
Two. Twins. Pair.
What do you think of the dad's performance? M'Baku as the father in the movie. Half the people say his acting was bad. He served no purpose. The other half say that he was funny. He served the story well.
Yeah, I mean, I get, a part of my thinking of, hey, if you're going to jump Springfield Canyon, Springfield Gorge, you're going to fall down probably. I think, Jordan Peele had a lot of, grandiose ideas for the movie, and then sometimes some things fall a little at the wayside. What's his name?
M'Baku.
No, I mean the actor's name.
His name was
Or
Duke, right?
professional journalistic integrity. Winston Duke? I was going to say Clark Duke, but I think that's a different actor. That's
I
the
think it's-
dorky-looking white dude. But,
Winston Duke.
Winston Duke, great name. Because he's like, hey, I'm kind of the goofy dad, and I'm kind of comedic relief, which I guess is kind of a tonal imbalance when you're making a horror movie. Because the movie can get dark at times, and you want that lighthearted. Oh, thank you, Winston Duke. You want a little bit of levity in your kind of more irksome scenes, and he offers that. But then again, what else did he have for the movie? Like Lupita Nyong'o is the movie, and so the kids are too, and then M'Baku is he's there, he's dad, he's chill, he's Clark Griswold sometimes.
That's what I was thinking. You stole my lines.
Well, you should have said it first, bitch. Or he's like the dad. He's trying to keep the family together, but that's about it. He literally gets handicapped in the movie, and then he doesn't have much to do in the movie. So he's not as well developed as the other family members.
But I really liked it because when I was watching Winston Duke, the dad, play his character, he reminded me of Clark Griswold, and that was nostalgia for me because I love those vacation movies, the Lampoon Vacation movies.
Oh yeah, European's the best.
And then it just took me back because my dad acts the same way when I go on a vacation trip. He's trying to have the best time ever and make the whole vacation a fun experience. So it touched on so many levels for me, the character.
But I guess he didn't have as much of an arc, or there wasn't as much character depth to it. Like I said, he was just he had a boat. He drove the boat sometimes, but that was about it. I guess he was the patriarch, but Lupita Nyong'o had more of the lines, stole more of the scenes. Directed the family more. The kids had the daughter, she's kicking ass in this whole environment. The son, he does his own thing, but the dad's kind of he's there. Use the flare. You remember to use the flare.
And also, I mean, the trailer showed it to us and rubbed it in our face that this was pretty much Lupita Nyong'o's movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not trying to spoil the movie for anyone yet because we're not in the spoiler section of the review. But You watch the trailers; they show a lot of Lupita Nyong'o. It's Lupita
She's-
Nyong'o's family.
Faces on the poster.
Her
so
face
it's
is on the
gotta be
poster.
about her.
So it has to be about her, and she's the one that has to deliver the acting goods.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas everybody else, the dad, the children, they have to support her performance.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't have much to add to that, but I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, so just
It's her film.
some-
She's the who's it's from Get Out. You know, she's the lead. The other, everyone else is ancillary. Well, the kids have more. The kids are second tier. The dad's third tier. The next door neighbors are.
Well, I feel like the kids were supposed to be in jeopardy and threat to give Lupita Nyong'o motive to try and save her children.
Mm-hmm. But they weren't just fodder for, like, you know, oh, this is mom time. I gotta save the kids. The kids have their own. They have their own storylines going on. They're developed or whatever. They're dealing with all of this stuff as I guess a kid would.
Yeah. And the directing, really good directing. Jordan Peele chose really good shots.
I would say he's a good craftsman because, like, you could watch like any other Blumhouse movie. Sorry, Jason. A lot of these movies feel kind of generic and they don't sway me one way or the other. They don't intrigue me. Sorry, kids, I didn't see The Nun or whatever else came out this year. The Possession of Mary Todd, whatever. Gives a shit.
Mary Todd Lincoln.
Yeah, you didn't see that? It was great. Me neither. But, like, you know, it feels like, because you can, like, oh, did you notice this Easter egg? Like, you mentioned in terms like, is that the Lost Boys? Apparently there was a Lost Boys Easter egg in the movie. They're like, hey, they're filming a movie here. Apparently they were filming the Lost Boys. Hey, you mentioned the Lost Boys, the Lost Boys, the Lost Boys. Whatever. But there's, like, different, like semi-spoiler to the movie. Like, the movie opens up and it mentions, like, the era, what year it's in. And, like, it zooms in on a TV. And I noticed, like, you see some VHSs. And one of the movies is Chud, Cannibalistic Humanoid Underdweller. It's like, hey, that's interesting. Hey, a horror movie. Maybe it's like his thing. Oh, it kind of relates to the movies. It's not just a fun little, you know, elbow jab like, hey, dumb, goofy horror movie. It kind of really ties into this movie. So this has a lot of, like, metaphors or tie-ins, Easter eggs, whatever, what have you. To, like, everything is kind of intentional in this movie. And I think there's some interviews. I don't read interviews. I don't read anything. Sorry. I watch movies. I'm a fucking mouth breather, popcorn eating,
Soda
popcorn chomper,
guzzing.
soda guzzling, asshole farting, whatever. Vacuous waste of space. But, like, hey, I noticed this thing's like, okay, everything is intentional. I enjoy, like, everything he does for the most part has a purpose, even if this movie sometimes falls on its face if you think about it. But it's not bad. It does. You know, what Mother was supposed to do, the Darren Aronofsky movie that came out a year or two ago, whatever, where people are like, oh, that makes me think, but except everyone hated this movie. Whereas this movie, you know, it's like 90% with the critics, but I don't count them because they're all, you know, whatever. And then the more accurate take you can take is the users. They're at 70, so, like, yeah, it was generally, I liked it, but it's like, it just makes me scratch my head too hard. It's kind of confusing sometimes, and I mostly side with the audience over the critics because the critics like to suck their own dicks and blow themselves sometimes, all the time, 99.99999.10% of the time.
I hope you're not a critic, or if you're talking about critics,
Hey, I speak
personal
for the people.
experience.
I'm like the Lorax. I speak for the dumbass mouth breathers like me. I don't think. I want to sit in a dark, air-conditioned room and eat popcorn. I like to put on the Captain whatever seasoning. It tastes like jalapeno cheddar. But yeah, like it. What the fuck were we even talking about?
How good a director.
Yeah, he's great. I like him. He's good. Like, he has Like, he has a vision, and he crafts everything. Hey, there's a Thriller shirt. That means something. I mean, it doesn't matter too much, but there's purpose and meaning behind his things instead of point camera here, scary thing happen, next shot, point camera here. Like, he has, I don't recall necessarily, like, great cinematography, like, oh, this shot is interesting, or this shot, but everything in the movie does have a purpose, is mostly to progress the film. And so on and so on. Move on to your next topic. I'm done.
Yes, so it's Jordan Peele is really a talented and gifted
Make
storyteller and filmmaker. And if you compare his career with other talented and gifted filmmakers, M. Night Shyamalan and Steven Spielberg. Which trajectory do you want him to follow? Do you want his third film to be a scary movie or to be a blockbuster, big budget film?
Well, you'd kind of hope neither, because you don't want him to be pigeonholed as the horror guy. Like, oh, he's a master. Like, it's interesting to be horror, but it doesn't have to be your only thing. I imagine he has other stories to tell. You know, horror is a nice wrapping paper around with his stories to tell. I guess there's a like, they don't all have to have a political message or whatever. Like, he doesn't have to be the horror guy that talks specifically about political topics of the 21st century in the Trump administration. Like, you don't have to do that. You can just make a fun movie that, you know, is well crafted and entertains an audience. Like, this movie kind of has those, not as much as Get Out, I suppose. I don't know. I don't think those people were racist. They wanted to be black. That sounds pretty cool. I want to be black.
Hey, Gatorade. I want to be like Mike.
Yeah, I want to be like Mia Hamm. Oh wait, nobody wanted to do that.
I love my balls.
But yeah, so like, you don't like, it's a nice transition of him going from comedy into horror. Like, oh, because, you know, for like, you know, a comedic actor does well in dramas, like Robin Williams. We talked about this the last time I reviewed something. I think we were talking about Robin Williams.
I think we
or
were.
Maybe just not in a review, but either, like, comedians tend to have good dramatic chops, or just they can transition well to other genres, unlike the other way around. You can't get like you can't get Daniel Day-Lewis to be in like Fart Knockers 2 or whatever. That doesn't work. But so Jordan Peele clearly has an eye for just, I don't know, creative endeavors in general, and you don't want him to just do horror. Like, it'll get repetitive, and maybe he's already bored of doing horror. Maybe he still likes horror. I mean, he's a big part of the re-up of Twilight Zone, so you think, okay, he must really like horror. But I mean, maybe secretly in the back of his mind, he's like, I could do other things. I mentioned just 3 minutes ago or whatever, like, hey, he wants to do gargoyles. There was like some interview he did. He said, I want to do gargoyles, which is kind of dark, but not, I mean, it's still kind of a kid's thing, I guess. So I think he can expand into other things, and maybe, like, Keanu kind of sucked. You remember Keanu?
Yeah.
Me neither. So
no, I forgot it too.
Because, you know, you can do a comedy thing, which he's good at. You know, he did Key and Peele for however many years. Remember Mad TV? That's the only thing I saw him do. So, you know, he can do a comedy, and he's probably pretty adept at that. Horror, he's clearly shown himself to be the new face of horror in these past few years, and he can do that. Or maybe he wants to do a drama that, you know, does Oscars, or maybe he wants to do an animated movie. Maybe he wants to be the next Phil Miller and Chris Lord, or I don't know. He can do he can do a Marvel movie. Who wants to make Black Panther 3 if Ryan Coogler decides to step down? Whatever. I mean, he can do whatever he wants, but I don't just want to see him do horror. I think, well, I guess the horror space like has a lot of room for improvement, because people are kind of like, I'm tired of jump scares. I'm tired of this. You know, maybe horror can be better. We'll see. We'll see what his aspirations lie. I hope for more than just horror.
Well, that's a problem. If you're a true fan of horror movies, like Jordan Peele, he'll write horror movies that make you think. But if you're somebody who just wants to make a horror movie for the paycheck, you know, like other Blumhouse guys, you just do it because you think this is what a horror movie's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Let's play What If. Jordan Peele's...
The Watcher. Okay.
Yeah. Jordan Peele's trajectory. Which way is his film career going to go? We're going to compare him with, what's the name of the guy that works with Simon Pegg?
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, Steven Spielberg, M. Night Shyamalan.
Mm-hmm.
I think their first two movies were scary movies. Steven Spielberg directed Duel, a really bad
Does that count?
TV movie.
What came after Jaws? Was that Close Encounters?
Oh, that's right. I thought it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I think it was Close Encounters. M. Night Shyamalan directed Unbreakable, his second film, The Sixth Sense. His third film was another... That was his third film, Signs.
Which is kind of a horror movie. Well, it's a sci-fi. It's still horror. But, I mean, it kind of... It veers off the path of horror, which I'd like Jordan Peele to do. Bring in Key. Key's not in these movies. Bring on Key. This movies suck without Key. Key's the funny one. Put him in those movies.
No, the guy that directed Simon Pegg.
Well, he's all over the place. He starts with
The zombie movie,
Well, it's a horror comedy.
horror comedy.
It's a horror comedy, and then he goes to an action movie in Hot Fuzz, and then he does a sci-fi. They're all action comedies essentially. They're just various flavors. Oh, Cornetto trilogy, various flavors of a comedy, action comedy, I guess. But like Shyamalan, dramatic, thrillery, but comic book horror, more straight up horror, and it's sci-fi with signs. Spielberg does
Horror, and then
horror
it goes
thriller
to
with
sci-fi with Close Encounters. You're right, that was his third film. Check it out, his third film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh my God.
And he didn't make Raiders of the Lost Ark until after Close Encounters, and then he did 1941. Then it was Raiders of the
We're
Lost
only
Ark.
talking about movies people have heard of. I don't bring up THX 1138-37 when I'm talking about George Lucas.
No, I just wanted to guess which way Jordan Peele would go. Would he go and make another scary movie, or would he try to do something different, like a sci-fi, like Steven Spielberg, or would he do action like Edgar Wright?
Well, I wouldn't be like horror was maybe, I guess, he's getting pigeonholed.
Yeah.
He did 2 horror movies back to back, and he's doing Twilight Zone, which is essentially another horror. So he's getting in that rut of being the horror guy. I'm guessing he was like maybe further, like maybe he'll do one more horror, maybe he's contractually obligated to do another horror, maybe something, whatever, and then maybe it won't be as well received. Maybe it'll be considered better than this one, because this one's fine. Get Out, I guess people consider more masterpieceful than this one because it's kind of all over the place.
Instant classic.
But I don't know. We'll see. Because the major draw is like, the very interesting creative visions behind what the horror movie could be, because it has like themes and interesting twists or whatever. Well, we don't care. It would just be a good movie, be a good story, which this movie generally is. Remember, we were talking about Us, not just Jordan Peele.
Yes.
But third time I'm bringing this up, Gargoyles. Maybe he just wants to do kind of a darkish kids movie with interesting characters, interesting story, about a purple winged man creature that has a robot mechanized version of him that he'll fight in part 2.
And that turns into stone when he's resting.
Stone. And a couple of them are comedic relief. Key can be one of the comedic relief ones, the little red one, or the little green one. There you go. Key.
Jordan Peele and Key can play the other characters.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if his next movie is a horror. But I will he's gonna direct Green Lantern, starring Jon Stewart, which I'd like.
For his sake, I hope
He's gonna direct Bond 26.
His third film, if it is a horror movie, I hope that's the last horror movie he directs for a while, because M. Night Shyamalan was pigeonholed to the horror movies. After his third movie, Signs, then the quality started going down.
Lady in the Water.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we assumed he had a whole playbook of Shyamalan had a whole playbook of genius ideas for horror in his mind, and he was essentially a 2.5 trick pony. So, this guy created or directed however many sketches for however many years for Key and Peele. So he's clearly a creative person. But I don't know. He has stories. He has creativity. He'll come up with something. I'm not worried about his career. I wouldn't be surprised to see a big dumb blockbuster middle of May, June movie coming into his future. We'll see.
All right, so that's how talented Jordan Peele is. He got his own segment in the review of his movie Us.
Everybody gets one, Jordan. Be grateful.
And then what would the next topic be? The message of the movie, because it seems like there is a message here. Get Out was about race. This one was open to different interpretations.
Well, because the movie opens up it opens up like telling you about Hands Across America. I'm like, that's a funny funny reference. Ha ha ha. I remember the 80s or whatever. So I'm guessing people were like, that's funny. But then it had it played in later into the movie. When the movie was coming together, Are we talking about spoil? I don't care. I don't need to spoil anything.
Just
I'm
let them
that
know
much of a
if
pro.
spoilers are coming out.
Well, because it end like Hands Across America comes back into the end. The tethered, which we didn't mention. They're called the tethered. What are our reviews exactly? Tangent. Our reviews don't really mention the movie. We just kind of go about our thoughts, and then we'd go on to tangents about what we feel about the movies in general.
We want to tell Jordan Peele what to do with his life.
Yeah, well, this is just a podcast about us talking about movies. We don't want to talk about the movie itself. It's just a platform. But either way, so Hands Across America is a thing, and like all these people are like, oh, we're killing the surface dwellers because we're the Chud. Remember when I talked about the Chud? We're the Chud. We're the cannibalistic humanoid underdwellers. We're killing the surface dwellers because we want to be the surface dwellers. We want a voice. And I like the first thing I thought to my head was like, oh, this is a play against like all those like charity events that don't work. That like they have good intentions, but then they ultimately lead to nothing. Like Hands Across America was about the starving children. Oh, these people are the starving children, and they're mad that, hey, they're still starving children, so we're going to redo Hands Across America by killing the surface dwellers, and then we're proving our existence. But, you know, a lot of people are also saying it's about, like, the socioeconomic, like, oh, these are poor people who don't have a chance, or these are, like, people in third world countries that don't have the chance, that don't have the opportunities, and the surface dwellers are the people with opportunities. And do we want to talk about Lupita Nyong'o or not yet?
Not yet. I will save that for the spoiler section.
Okay.
The message I feel that this movie delivered was the political message going on in this country, where right now Trump is president, and half the people say Trump is the right choice. How can you not see it? And the other half are saying Trump is the wrong choice. How can you not see it? And this kind of explains, if you do not see what the right choice is, that's because you're not you. You're somebody else. You're an imitation. You're a copy. You're an evil twin.
I just saw it as this is the other half. This is the neglected. We're coming to rise up. You've had it too good for too long. Now it's our time. Now it's our chance.
Like
I
that.
think that's the general conception about what the theme is.
Like that scary episode of The Simpsons where the dolphins take over the surface world.
Jordan Peele's a hack.
But
he ripped off the Chud.
The safest message without upsetting people, without making anybody angry or involving
you said Trump,
politics.
not me. I voted for Perot.
The safest message you can take away from here. Get Out had the character watching TV. There was a lot of TV.
This movie's a commentary on TV.
In this movie, it opens up with a little girl watching TV. Lupita Nyong'o is a child watching TV. So the message you can take away from this movie...
TV's bad. Cancel your Netflix subscriptions.
I was going to take it the other way and saying that who cares if your parents yell at you and say you watch too much TV? You might end up becoming successful. I think Jordan Peele, when he was a little kid, watched way too much TV, and look at him now.
Mm-hmm.
No? You don't think so?
No, that's stupid. I read some theories about this movie, and it was like stupid, and I'm like, I don't want to bring it up because then it'll probably pinpoint exactly what dumb theories I read. But I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? That is dumb and nonsense. Boy, you are putting your own brain in this, which I guess is fine what the movie's intending, but boy, that ain't it. I have no idea what you're talking about. That makes no sense. How your brain goes there does not make sense. And whatever you're saying TV is good, I have no idea where that's coming from. That don't make a lick of sense. Knock that shit off, boy. Are you up out your mind?
Okay. Now that we talked about the story, directing, the acting, the hidden message within the movie, now it's time to give our recommendations. Your recommendation.
Well, I'm a creative genius, so my opinions differ from the general audience, the general populace. Sorry, I'm more of an artiste that way. Like I said, I like this movie better than Get Out. Like I said before, Get Out felt a little more of a vanilla horror-y thing to me. This one, I know, like, I saw a lot of people saying, like, oh, I saw the twist coming. I saw the twist at the beginning. I don't care. Like, I'm not trying to clue things in together. I'm not trying to look at every single, like, thing. Sure, I noticed Chud, but it was there. It was on the screen. But it's a cliche and it sounds dumb, like you don't want to operate this way as a human being, but I do turn off my brain when I'm watching the movie because I want to see how he's telling the story. I don't want to be like, I saw this piece and I saw this piece. Where's my red strings? Where's my cork board? I don't want to do movies that way. That's why I kind of give up on trailers. I don't go on Reddit to look at message boards to see what people's theories are. I don't give a shit about that. I want to be fed the movie as I'm watching it. So I didn't try to figure out the movie. But this movie does, it goes for it makes leaps. It goes for it. It takes risks, and I appreciate that about a movie. It feels more interesting and more unique to me than Get Out was. Like I said, I don't know how many times I got to say this. Get Out did feel more conventional to me. This one feels a little more interesting and more unique. This movie does also kind of upset me the more I think about it. When it's like, oh, this is kind of a plot hole. This doesn't make sense. This, and this. But for me, the good outweighs the bad. And I could say I recommend this movie to our listeners. Thank you.
My recommendation for this movie, don't miss it. It is worth watching.
Mm-hmm. Join us in watching this movie. Hold for applause.
Well said. Alrighty, now we're moving on. In every podcast, we talk about spoilers. We're moving on.
Oh, really? Well, I always felt like closing topics, but okay.
To the spoiler section
Whoever's listening
of
to
this
this
show.
for 30 minutes, but go ahead.
This is a spoiler section, so if you haven't seen the movie, pause the podcast, put your phone back in your pocket, go to the movies, watch the movie, stay for the credits. After the credits, go outside because they always kick you out of the auditorium. Take out your phone and resume listening to our spoiler talk. All right, I've given you enough time to avoid spoilers. If you're here, it's because you want to be spoiled and you want to be part of the spoiler discussion. You go, my man.
Captain Marvel was disappointing. Spoiler. But yeah, so Lupita Nyong'o was the tethered all along, which it's a very like people saw it as like, oh, they switched the whole time, and I didn't see that coming because I didn't care to. I didn't care to look for it. I let the movie be the movie, and that's a very interesting twist. I like the but it was this the whole time, and I know like sometimes like you think about it and it's like that's kind of confusing. A lot of this, and that. On first viewing, it's fine. It's a fine enough twist. Second time around, like I bet if I saw it a second time around, I'd be more annoyed. I'm like, well, why are you acting this way if you're clearly the tethered or this or that or the other? But it was fine enough for the ride.
So the evil twins are called tethered in this movie.
37 minutes into this review, probably less. And now I already said the word tethered multiple times.
Yeah, but I didn't know what you were talking about had I not seen this movie.
People are who's searching these nobody who's going so deep onto YouTube or whatever to like these guys have four views. I should watch it. Like unless you're so hungry, like nobody's watching the video with 4 views and being like, this will be the turning point for how I decide to see this movie. No, if you're going this deep into looking for a review on us, then it's because you probably already saw the damn thing. Idiot.
I think with the twist, the Lupita Nyong'o twist in this movie, everyone's expecting that. When you have a movie about evil twins in TV shows, in any kind of movie,
shaved off his goatee and put it on the regular Spock the whole time.
You're expecting the switch. If you don't get the switch, then
I
you're
wasn't
upset.
expecting the switch, but only because I don't care.
No, but let's say
I wasn't thinking.
The movie ends.
I turned my brain off.
And you didn't get the switch. Wouldn't you be upset? I would be upset if there was no switch.
Like I said, I wasn't thinking about it. I'm not a mindless zombie like you consuming television all the live long day. I canceled my Netflix subscription because I'm poor.
That said, if anyone wants to share their Netflix account and password
Please
with us,
don't. Or do. I don't care. And buy me a PlayStation and an iPad.
No,
and
you're
a
just
Roku.
asking too much. You're just too greedy now.
Subscribe to our Patreon.
What is it?
The Platitude Era at gmail.com.
And then we're going to need to come up with rewards. We're going to work on that.
Your reward is my enjoyment of the new Nintendo Switch you buy me. So yeah, we're talking about the movie. So
the spoilers.
This is the spoiler section where I joke about a fucking Patreon. So Lupita Nyong'o's the tether the whole time, and she couldn't talk good because her tether choked the original Lupita Nyong'o.
And the original Lupita Nyong'o with the switch and now the confusion had a really scary evil voice. And the marketing teased that it was the evil twins. You watch the movie, and it turns out they weren't evil.
Well, yeah, that's kind of so I guess it's it's a sub twist, a minor twist, a half twist is like they were never bad, and besides the fact that they were killing people. But I mean, I guess they had a twisted view on the world because they lived underground for so long. But they weren't necessarily bad people. They just they needed to be heard. They needed to be seen. They had their, you know, they wanted their way in the world.
Now, after watching this movie, how are people going to feel where sometimes you're walking out in public and you see your double?
Oh, like, oh, what's my twin doing over there? I thought we lived in the same house.
Like, haven't you seen some celebrities when they go out in public and then the media or whoever says, oh, this person looks just like this celebrity. It's like their double or their doppelganger.
Oh, yeah, that's a stupid line of thinking.
I guess I watched too much TV.
See, that's why you saw the twist coming and I didn't, because I'm more learned than you.
No, it's because I get enough oxygen into my brain because I not only use my nose but mouth to breathe as well. So nothing else to talk about the twist. Let's talk
I like
about
how we always hold off on like okay, here's the spoilers. Here's a spoiler. Okay, let's talk about nothing for a while.
Okay, let's talk about some people's complaints because you said that there were some things that just like hurt your brain because it didn't make sense.
Well, I'm not as complaining about some like some people are like, how did they get those jumpsuits? How did they get those scissors? I don't really care about that stuff, but if I did think about it, it would annoy me more. Because they're supposed to be clones.
Yes.
It was a government experiment that they were clones the whole time, and it because it goes to because it does a lot of reaching for stuff, and it explains a lot. There's a lot it doesn't explain, and so it leaves your mind to try and connect the dots. But the more you try, because it's not law in this movie per se, like, oh, they did, like, so the adults are clones but they have their children are also clones, or are they products of their there's too much going on that it doesn't explain. Like, okay, Lupita Nyong'o is a clone, her kids are clones, I don't know, everybody has a clone, but I mean, and then like they mirror their surface people, but like Lupita Nyong'o, like underground Lupita Nyong'o, well, her name is Red. If you there's Adelaide and Red. Surface Lupita is Adelaide. Underground Lupita's Red. And 77 minutes into the review, and I say their names. But like, okay, so and then she talks about like, oh, my children were born in this. You got to open fluffy, soft things for Christmas, and I had to open sharp things. I'm like, okay, this is a cute poem, but is this like this is how Christmas goes or not? Because they show the underground stuff, and they're just like mirroring what people are doing, but like in empty classrooms. So it doesn't seem all that bad there.
That's true.
So I don't know what the entire it's understandable Red's like complaints with the world is because she was switched, but that doesn't necessarily make sense for like the rest of the tethered people's art. Like, we're all suffering, which I guess you don't have you don't have a car or a mortgage or any of that stuff, but I mean, you're weird clones. So,
and you're never alone.
You never should have existed to begin with. See, like, it has this political thing, like the haves and the have-nots, but these people never should have existed to begin with, so it's hard to necessarily agree with their plight. You can kind of sympathize with it, I guess, but I don't necessarily empathize with it. I don't care. Like, I see what you're throwing down here, Jordan, but it's not gelling together. It's a little bit of, you threw a little too much oil in my water, in my vinegar, and it's not all mixing together. It tastes good. I like to put my bread in it, but it's not all there. It ain't filet mignon.
And then also, people complain, how did they get the scissors? How did they get the jumpsuits? How long did Lupita Nyong'o have from when she was switched to when she made it back to the surface?
So let's say she was like 8 years old, and then she's like 30 or whatever. in this when she grows up. So let's just round to about 30 years.
So in 30 years, they couldn't acquire enough scissors and jumpsuits for 30 years? I'm just asking. And what, Lupita Nyong'o is the only one that was able to go up to the surface? Nobody else could
she
go?
She was free. She inspired the people. She was the chosen one because she got kidnapped as a child and remembered that she wasn't from the see, that's another, like, the movie that's why she, like, is having a revenge plot against the surface dwellers, but that makes sense for her, but not for the rest of the tethered. Like, the other tethered don't necessarily care. They didn't have thoughts or opinions or anything until this person showed them the light. I get, but see, it doesn't make sense because her plight is she was kidnapped and she was stolen from a life that she should have had, which makes sense for her story, but not, hey, we're all suffering here. I guess they're all kind of suffering, but that's not the see what I'm trying to do. Like, when you're originally watching the movie, you're like, oh, these people have been undermined for too long. It's time for them to rise up. But then when you find out that Red was really just kidnapped the whole time and didn't feel like that initially, maybe I need to rewatch the movie. But, it's like, I'm trying to take back what I had. This doesn't feel like a revenge story. This feels like the zombies are attacking. The zombies haven't the zombies haven't been allowed their brains for too long, and it's time to revolt.
But I feel like anything can happen in 30 years. She had 30 years to educate them so they can
30 years
break
to think
their
about
tether.
Hands across America.
Yeah. 30 years to steal scissors, 30 years to steal jumpsuits, 30 years to plot how they're going to make their way out. And I mean, how many of those clones could just go up to the surface and steal jumpsuits and steal scissors for 30 years?
Apparently none of them, because they all needed one Maz Kanata to tell her about the Force.
And in the end, any interesting fan theories you want to talk about? I know you said you read some, but you didn't want to talk about them.
Well, I don't want to talk about, because those are more specific to a stupid person's ideologies or thoughts. But I mean, there's the one theory that it's a little more prevalent in reviewers or theorists or whatever, that the boy was switched. It was like, because they talk about, to set it up, they talked about, like, hey, you've changed. You're like, he got real quiet. He was different last summer. Last summer he was different, and now whatever. But then, like, so, like, oh, he got switched last year and now this year. But that shit don't fly with me, because, like, why would Surface Lupita want to switch her, like, so her kids should be half tethered, half human, and those are her kids. So why would she want to switch for the other kid who's technically not her kid?
So you can look at it at a million different ways.
Well, here was my argument against my logical thought, which was, I guess she understands the plight of the chud. So, like, she understands that Underground Boy doesn't have such a great time. So I want to bring Underground Boy to the surface so he can revel in the splendors of the surface world, which I guess makes sense, but then it's not her son. So why would she want to switch with the child who's technically not her son?
And then last detail, why is it that the son, if he was switched last year, how come he's able to lead the mirror?
Lead the mirror?
Yeah, because they do that mirroring where the little kid was copying him.
Yeah, see, he has Jordan, my Jorjor. He has a lot of great like, he's like, oh, see, they're tied. They're clones of each other and they share the same soul, which we haven't talked about 98 minutes into this thing. But, like, so they're clones and they share the soul, so that's why they're, linked together, because some dumb reason. The government doesn't know how to clone a soul. Fuck you. So, because they're mirrors, he started walking backwards, and then the tethered version of him walked backwards into a fire. So I'm like, okay, that's neat. You didn't set that up before, and the tethered are acting independently a lot, so I guess they have a soul because they're doing things on their own. The surface dwellers don't have scissors or jumpsuits or one glove, so I don't know. It makes sense, like, oh, he could, like, because the kids are half tethered, so they can, they have more control over the tether or whatever. But it doesn't make, like, oh, because they flip flopped. It just doesn't. It doesn't coagulate well in my brain.
And you never saw any other clones mirroring their surface dwellers. You never saw any copying.
But I mean, these kids would be unique because
Yeah.
they're halves. They're half breeds.
But like, for example, when the dad Umbaku, Mr. Duke,
Mm-hmm.
when he's like limping because he got hit in the leg and he's handicapped and he's limping, you don't see his tethered version limping as well.
Yeah, see, that's kind of another, like, years ago when we were talking about M'Baku in the beginning of the movie, why he doesn't feel as fleshed out as a character is because he kills his tethered, like. Did you hear that, audience? I snapped.
You Thanos'd.
Good one. So he gets rid of his tethered like that, so it feels like he doesn't have much to do for the rest of the movie. It doesn't feel like as much development or whatever. He kills Tim Heidecker later on in the movie, his tether, which fun, I guess.
Which
Like-
added for a really good joke. Please watch the movie to get that awesome joke.
Well, they're 957 minutes into this thing. If they have, you told them to see the movie before they went on to this part.
No, pause and then see the movie.
Well, either way, they fucking saw the thing. Who's listening to this? I'm not listening to this. But what was our point? What are we talking about?
We're talking about spoilers.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. But I mean, like,
How come the little kid is able to mirror?
How come M'Baku's isn't? They're not mirrors of each other. The kids aren't. It couldn't theoretically, like, the daughter doesn't know how to do that because she's older and she did. She never thought about tether stuff that she didn't learn how to control her tether. If that's what the movie's throwing down, I don't know, because it doesn't answer. It throws a lot of things in the air, but it doesn't not necessarily all of it sticks. So that's why the dumb like it sets up that the kid was switched, but it doesn't necessarily stick to the wall. So that's why it's only a kind of half theory that people have, but half of the people aren't buying.
And with that, we conclude this podcast.
Because you didn't have any rebuttal, because I'm right.
Because I was just over my head. Shoo! Couldn't catch it.
Because I'm going a mile an hour. 'Cause I just had an 8-ball.
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this podcast, whether you listen to it on Anchor app, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anything else. Thank you for watching our podcast on YouTube. You can find us at Platitude Era. Keep up with us socially on Twitter at Platitude Era or on Instagram at Platitude Era Show. You want to sign off or should I?
I don't do that. That's beneath me. Like the tethers.